Good morning, and welcome back to Prague. Praha Mahika. Here we are in Magic Prague, and we are on the Old Town Square. I am Chris Sandeman. I'm your brief host this morning, and what's my goal? My goal is to show you the beginning of our Prague free walking tour with one of our excellent English language guides, and we're just going to spy in for the first 15 minutes or so that way you get a sense of what will happen for the first 10-15 minutes of your free tour with Sandeman's New Europe when you come to Prague sometime in the future. But hey, look, if you're here right now live streaming with me, then great, you made it on time. And for everyone else who's watching later on as a video on demand, you still get a taste of what the beginning of a Prague tour here on the Old Town Square of Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, will look like for you going forward in the future. All right, well, let's spin the camera and go listen in on the guide as he's getting started, all right? Where are you, little spinning button? Boom.
So when I came to live in Prague about 8 years ago, I thought, what can I do for a job that doesn't involve a very difficult and complex Czech language, which you may have encountered on your journey around Prague, and something which we'll come back to later. I like telling people about this beautiful city, this country, its history, and its culture, so I became a tour guide. That's why I'm taking you around Prague today. Now, the shape of the tour is what we do is we go a bit of the old town, we do a bit of the new town, and then what we do is we then have a little break. I'll send you off to little different directions. And then we will go down to the Jewish area, and we'll talk about the Jewish community in Prague, and we'll talk about two of the synagogues, and in particular one synagogue and its direct association with the Holocaust. Then we will go and look at Charles Bridge. We actually don't go to Charles Bridge on this part of the tour. Sorry to disappoint you. Has anybody been down to Charles Bridge yet? Yeah, what's it like down there? Crowded, that's the word I'm looking for. When I became a tour guide, I made the mistake. I had an evening tour of 2 hours, and I thought, I know, wouldn't it be nice if I took my tourists down to Charles Bridge? Big mistake. Spent 1 hour looking for everybody, all right? So that's the reason we don't go down to Charles Bridge. Also, we don't go to Prague Castle on this part of the tour. We have a separate tour that goes every day at 2:30. And if you're coming to Prague for the first time, I would strongly recommend you going up to Prague Castle. It's one of the largest and oldest castle complexes in the world. It's now a UNESCO heritage site. You can go up there and wander around on your own, as I did when I first came here, but I guarantee you that you will miss a lot. So I strongly suggest that you actually go up to Prague Castle. There's lots of companies that do tours up to Prague Castle, but of course, we prefer it if you come with us. And I can tell you how you can join our tour today. And if you enjoy my style of guiding, you can join me for the tour, because I'll be doing the castle tour this afternoon. Okay. Now, when we go to look at Charles Bridge and Prague Castle, we're going to be crossing a main road. And I don't know if you've noticed in the brief period of time you've been here in Prague, but Czech drivers don't seem to have much respect for human life. All right, so when we cross the road, can we all do it together on the green man, please? Okay. Also, I have to point out to you that Prague is still one of the top 10 cities in the world for thieves and pickpockets. Like we guys, we're very pleased to see tourists coming back to Prague. It's been a very quiet 2 years. But please, if you have anything of value, please do put it beyond reach. If you've got any questions as we go around, please do ask me. I haven't quite got a Wikipedia knowledge of anything, of everything rather, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try and find it out for you. I'll Google it, all right? I'm just being honest. I just want to make sure you're going away with the truth and not any alternative facts. Now, some of you are probably free tour veterans. You know how a free tour works.
Hey, Di. Hi, Mimosa.
And I don't get paid to do this tour. What I hope is that after 3 hours of interesting, entertaining information, useful information about being a tourist here in Prague, that you will reward me for my time. How much is down to you. I won't mention it again. I'll only remind you at the end of the tour. Okay? Good. That's it. Right, let's get started. This way, please. Okay, that's enough. Well, the thing is, the tour does go on for nearly 3 hours, and people aren't used to walking very much. I think we'll probably do about 7,000 steps by the end of this tour. So, so I don't want you begging for me to let you sit down. So let's just start here. So here we are in Prague, and Prague sits in the west of the country in an area known as Bohemia, where they like making beer, drinking beer. The eastern part of the country is called Moravia, which is a wine-growing region. Now, the name Bohemia is believed to come from around about 500 years before the birth of Christ. There was a Celtic tribe here called the Boii, and they migrated further west into northern France and then into England and Ireland. They were replaced by a German-speaking tribe who called this the home of the Boii. And German home is Heim, so they called it Boiheim, and eventually got corrupted in Latin to Bohemium and eventually Bohemia. So this area is known as Bohemia, and people who live in this area are known as Bohemians. But it's not to be confused with a term that arose in the 19th century in France and England to describe people who wanted to live a free artistic lifestyle. They confused them with the Romani, who originated in the Punjab region of India and migrated to Europe during the 8th to 10th century. But the name has stuck. So when I refer to people here as Bohemians, please don't think they're all living a free artistic lifestyle. Okay. Now this Old Town Square was established around about 1000 AD, and as you can imagine, it's changed considerably over that time. For instance, we're about 2 to 4 meters higher than the original Old Town Square. The reason being, they have terrible problems with floods here. Bad floods in 22, 2010 and 2012. Now at the time, they didn't have the technology to lower the river, so they just raised the land up instead. So these houses that line the Old Town Square, when you go down into what is the cellar or basement today, it is the cellar or basement today, but that would have been the level of the Old Town Square. So it gives you an idea how much has changed over the centuries. Also, the look of the square has changed, particularly during the 20th century. If you were standing at this spot at the beginning of the 20th century, you would not see this beautiful street that goes off to the right, which we're going to walk up and talk about later. You wouldn't see this memorial, this huge memorial to Jan Huss, one of the first religious reformers and one of the most important people in Czech history. You would see this wonderful Marianne column, but 20 years later, you wouldn't see the column. So we're going to talk about why it was there, why it disappeared, and why it came back. Also, the square has been witness, as you can imagine, being so big, to a number of major historical events that have shaped the rich history of this country. For instance, on this balcony here, in 1948, Klement Gottwald, who was the leader of the Czechoslovak Communist Party, announced the formation of the first Czechoslovak communist government after a coup here in 1948, which then subjected the country to 41 years of communism. It's a very important part of their recent history, and it's something I'm going to refer to throughout the course of the tour. Now, do we have any fans of Franz Kafka here? Any Franz Kafka fans?
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Fans? Any advance on zero? Any advance on zero? Good. I'll leave that and move swiftly on. Okay, would you like to come this way, please?
I can't believe they don't love Kafka.
Sorry?
Can't believe they don't love Kafka.
But it often happens. I think in my tours, I maybe get one or two people, maybe every 3 months, says they're a fan. But,
shame. I mean, Metamorphosis,
Sorry?
you know, the Judgment, the Urteil, like there's so many good Kafka things.
Yeah, but I'll do the Church of Our Lady before we see. Guys, do you want to come around this way, please? Can you kind of go around in a nice big semicircle? Super duper duper. I don't like having my back to you. I always feel I'm being very rude if I do that. Okay, one thing I just want to point out is this lovely church here. It's known as the Church of Our Lady before Sin. The thing about this church, they started building it in the 14th century, and it took 150 years to complete. Now, I wanted to look at the two towers on the church. Do you notice any difference between the tower on your left and the tower on your right? Which one's bigger, sir? Yeah, the one on the right. The one on the right, that's the male tower, Adam. The one on your left, the thinner one, is the female tower, Eve. And there's lots of examples when they put two towers on a church during medieval times. They always made one tower bigger than the other, the male tower. And historians say this goes to prove that even 700 years ago, men were thinking about their size too, and nothing has changed in all that time. Now inside the church here, you can find the tombstone of Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe was a 16th century Danish astronomer who, with Johannes Kepler up at Prague Castle, worked out the laws of planetary motion, which then Newton applied to his theory of gravitation in the following century. And Newton said he got where he was by standing on the shoulders of giants, and by that he was referring to Tycho Brahe and also Johannes Kepler. And you can find Tycho Brahe's tomb inside this church. Now, people often ask me, why are those buildings in front of the church? For the very simple reason, apparently, the buildings were there first. No sort of town planning in those days. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to switch you around, and I've got to talk about this guy here. If I didn't talk about this guy, I would not be doing my job as a guide, because he's one of the most important people in Czech history. So I've got to come a little bit closer. Actually, I'll bring it down a little bit, mate. Okay, so this guy behind me, his name is Jan Huss, and this is where, going back to my lecturing days, I will resort to my visual aids. Okay? Sometimes I think it helps because quite often I have people on my tour for whom English is not their first language, so I sometimes think a picture helps. And also they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, the guy behind me, his name is Jan Huss. And he was born in the middle of the 14th century, and he was one of the first religious reformers. He was trying to bring about changes to the Catholic religion about 100 years before Martin Luther was nailing his 95 Theses to the Wittenberg church door. And I'll say that again very slowly, because sometimes people mishear me and think he was making some kind of dirty protest. 95 Theses to the Wittenberg church door. Now, let me just see, I've got a little photograph of him, or should say a monograph of him. And here he is. This is Jan Hus, the great Czech religious reformer. You see this? Okay. Apparently, this has been very heavily photoshopped, but it's showing his best side. All right, it's showing his best side. Okay, and also, I'm going to show you a picture also of Martin Luther. Here we are, this is Martin Luther, the great German reformer. Now, possibly the reason that you've heard of Martin Luther, but you've not heard of Jan Hus, is for the very simple reason that Jan Hus died about 50 years before the arrival of the printing press in Europe. Printing press was the first kind of media. So when Martin Luther was challenging the Catholic Church, he had access to the first kind of media. And we all know how important media is today for being able to spread your views and opinions and misinformation, particularly at 3 o'clock in the morning on Twitter. Now, when he trained as a priest, new ideas beginning to come back from England, from a guy called John Wycliffe at Oxford University about reforming the Catholic religion, particularly with regard to the sermon and the mass on a Sunday, because in those days it was all held in Latin, and ordinary people didn't speak Latin. The only people who spoke Latin were priests, scholars, and members of the nobility. By the way, does anybody here speak fluent Latin? What about conversational Latin? Could you tell us about your holiday in Latin, or the beer and fries in Latin? No, and it was no different 700 years ago. So when people were going to church on a Sunday, maybe it was a bit like going to watch a foreign film without any subtitles. Have you ever done that? Yeah, it's a great game, isn't it? Great drinking game. You have to guess what's coming next. So people come out of church on a Sunday and say, what was the sermon like this week? It was great. Yeah? What did he talk about? Well, God, obviously. Anything else? Yeah, Jesus. And I don't know. I didn't understand a bit in between. So when Jan actually translated some of the Bible into Czech and held services in Czech, for the first time people could begin to understand what the entire process was about. And people started to listen to them, and they became the first religious reformers known as the Hussites. Now, but the real problem where Jan ran into trouble with the Catholic Church was on the selling of indulgences. Does anybody know what an indulgence is? You're nodding. Do you want to share it with us?
Because you buy something from people and say you will forgive it.
That's right. What used to happen? Yeah, it involves sinning, getting into heaven, and the exchange of money. What used to happen was when you went to confession and you did something bad, the priest would say you need to do something good to balance that up. And that balancing was called an indulgence. But people were lazy. Have you done that indulgence yet? You said you would do it. I know, I've had such a busy week. So at a time, when the Catholic Church were trying to find ways to raise money to build all these lovely churches and cathedrals in Europe, hit upon a great idea. You don't do them, as you pointed out, you just pay for them. But Jan said, well, hang on a minute. We're not a business, but the church didn't know what to do because people had started to listen to him. In 1410, he was excommunicated from the Catholic Church, but by 1415, it came to a head, and they said, what are we going to do about the Jan problem? What should we do about Jan? So they invited him to Constance, which is now part of Germany. They listened very patiently to what he had to say in 1415, Then they took him outside and burned him alive at the stake for being a non-believer. This is how you deal with a problem, just take it outside and set fire to it. On my estate, they used to do that with sofas. Now, here in Prague, there was an outrage. Not just because this guy was a religious reformer, but more than that, he'd started in a way to lay down this idea, it wasn't a fully formed idea of a Czech nation with a Czech people, with a Czech language. He even invented some of the letters that are still used in the Czech alphabet today. I can't describe how important this guy is to the Czechs, because in 1968, when 300,000 troops of the Warsaw Pact invaded Czechoslovakia, it said the Czechs climbed up onto the statue there and put a blindfold round the eyes of Jan Huss because they didn't want their legend to see his country being invaded and taken over yet again. Now this was put here in 1915 at a time when the Czechs were still part of a bigger empire. First the Austrian Empire, then the Austro-Hungarian Empire for nearly 400 years. And they were trying to get their independence. Now the Czechs didn't want this to go here because they knew what it symbolized. I suppose, in a way, simplistically, a huge middle finger to the Austrian authorities, saying we want our independence, and we want it. So there we are. That's Jan Hus. That's why we have to talk about him. That's why he's so important to the Czechs. Okay, are you okay with this heat, guys? Do you want to get in the shade? Do you want to make a decision for you? Do you want to get in the shade a bit? Okay, let's get in the shade, okay?
Hey Ryan, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a quick wander over to the clock, and I really appreciate your time. And I know that everyone online is going to really enjoy watching this now and in the future. Have a great day. Good to see you, okay? Take care. All right, guys. How nice was that? How fun. Oh, let's thank everyone else. Thank you, all you guys. I really appreciate it. Take care. Have a great trip to Prague. Enjoy. All right. Sorry about yelling into the mic there. Big voice Chris. Hard not to. Moser, you're right. Kafka is one of the best. Sorry not to answer you sooner. And gosh, you can't argue with that. I mean, the guy was just such a, revolutionary thinker and author. But I guess not on the reading list of many schools these days. Shame. All right, come on. Let's take a quick look at the Astronomical Clock. I miss you, and I miss Prague. But I'm in Prague. I already miss it because I'm leaving today, which makes me sad. But I'm heading to Munich, another place that I miss. Oh, look, here's another one of our tours. Here's a tour in Spanish. I don't actually really speak Spanish, guys, so I can't tell you what he's saying, but let's take a look at the clock while he's talking.
A la humanidad se fija un tipo que lleva un sombrero de aranza. Esa figura del sombrero de aranza simboliza un prestamista judío de la época. Y también aquí, al llegar a un punto, que no con la cabeza. ¿Qué nos pide? Que no seamos avariciosos.
Really cool. Lots of legends about this thing. From the potential hauntings by the clockmaker, who according to legend was blinded, maybe even killed after creating the clock, so that way no one could ever replicate it. Here's a really cool thing that's super Czech. In the Czech Republic, you don't just have your given name, you also have a name day. So you celebrate in the Czech Republic both your birthday and also your name day. So depending upon what your name is, your name has a name day. And the name days are listed here around the outside of this lower part of the astronomical clock, which I think is really very, very Czech and very cool. Whoop. Look at all those names. Neat. Very neat. Okay. Well, guys, we are going now for 20 minutes, and the point of this was just to give you a quick introduction back to Prague in the morning. Hey, I gotta go back to work. My life isn't just live streaming, it's paperwork, it's bookkeeping, it's meeting with banks and lawyers and accountants and doing all of that crazy stuff. So I'm going to leave this here out there on the internet, so that way in the days, weeks, and months to come, you guys know Prague, it's waiting for you. Sandeman's, New Europe, we're waiting for you. Come back, we'll see you soon. And Di, we gotta talk. We gotta talk soon, brother, because I want to promote you. All right, everybody, have fun, enjoy, take care, free tour enthusiasts from the world over, and we'll see where we see you next. I'm Chris Sandeman from the Prague Old Town Square, signing off for now. Ciao.